All right, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about offshore, nearshore fishing, whatever else you guys want to hear today. Everybody's chair should have a brochure, a coupon, and an outline on it. My wife's going around handing out raffle tickets too. If you're here in person, we'll give you a raffle ticket at the end of the seminar. We'll do that free raffle. You can get a chance to win a free 10-hour all-day if you get the lucky ticket. By way of introduction, my name is Hubbard. I'm the Vice President, co-owner of Hubbard's Marina. Hubbard's Marina is over there at John's Pass in Madeira Beach. We do a little bit of fishing, anything from 2 inches of water out past 1,000 foot. We have a trip for you guys to go catch them. So there's a lot of options, private charters, party boats, and today we're going to be talking about some nearshore and offshore fishing. How many of you guys actually own your own boat? Most of you guys, very cool. So we're going to talk more about small boat fishing then, since our crowd is all you guys fish offshore on your boats, or are you more nearshore? Nearshore as well? Cool, so we'll focus on the nearshore fishing then. Nearshore fishing to me is out to 20 miles. Is that about the area you're fishing? Very cool. So that's what we'll focus on. We'll be talking a little bit about grouper fishing, snapper fishing, and some of these exciting pelagics. What's going on, man? We got one more raffle ticket if you don't mind.
Well, I'm getting bad connection.
Oh, okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Just let it keep playing and then it'll come back up. We're trying to also broadcast our seminar live, so working through the bugs there.
Cool.
But nearshore fishing is a lot of fun. The reason I really love nearshore fishing is there's so much to do out there. This time of year, the nearshore fishing for red grouper and mangrove snapper, gray snapper is really good, and you have a chance for hogfish. Plus, we've got cobia in the area now, and with all this live bait moving into the area, the mackerel have come back and they're really starting to bite well on the beaches. Plus, you have kingfish coming down into the area here in the next week or two. The kingfish and mackerel follow the full moons. So probably the next full moon is when we'll see that big push is fall run kingfish as we come into kingfish tournament season. Also, this past week alone, we caught 2 sailfish at Hubbard's Marina. So the sailfish, the big pelagic billfish, are coming into the area fall on that bait as well. So it's a great time of year to go fishing, and if you have your own boat, definitely get out there. With these pelagics in the area, whenever you're offshore fishing, you gotta remember a flat line. You guys flatline on your vessels? Know what a flat line is? All right, cool. All right, so flatlining is just simply having a bait out the back of the boat. You also have to have a pitch rod ready. Because many of you guys, when you're flatlining this time of year, we're flatlining with wire. A wire stinger rig with a live bait on a balloon for the kingfish. Well, if you see a billfish come up into the area that's swimming up your chum line, that wire leader isn't going to entice that billfish. You got to have a pitch rod ready so you can cast them out of free line, live bait, or dead bait to entice one of those fish. Always have a pitch rod ready. But let's get back to my outline here. We'll start. We went through the introductions already. One of the big things that I'd like to mention at the beginning of my seminar, and I promise I'll just mention it, we won't beat this up too long, is the issues facing our fishery. Right now we have a lot of regulation as it is right now, and there's a lot of scary regulation pending. For example, they're talking about cutting our hogfish limit from 5 per day down to 1 per day, and the size limit from 12-inch minimum up to a 16-inch minimum. So that would really, really hurt. And then there's a lot of other scary things out there. Like for example, they closed 5,000 square miles of the fishery in the Northeast to protect the fishery to all commercial and for-hire sector. So if they start closing it for commercial anglers, it won't be long until they close it for recreational anglers. And if they're doing it in the Northeast, it won't be long until it happens in the Gulf. So I can't stress it enough how important it is to join groups like the Fishing Rights Alliance or the Coastal Conservation Association, FRA, and CCA respectively. If you can't go out to join all the meetings and go to all the different state meetings and make your voice heard, you pay a little dues, and they'll go out and do it for you. How many of you guys saw the NRA table at the front counter when you came in? I did. NRA, no one will mess with gun rights. There's 65 million NRA members. In the city, or in the area of Pinellas County, we have about 50,000 plus registered boaters, there's only 650 CCA members. So that's why fishing rights are easily taken advantage of by the federal government, state government. So it's really important to stand up for your rights, get involved. That's enough about that. So I like to start off talking about tackle choices. Since there's only a handful of you guys there, maybe some live viewers too, we'll talk about tackle choices, but I want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. So what's one of your favorite species to target? Snapper? Mangrove snapper? I like you guys. That's my favorite too. Mangrove snapper is one of my favorite species to target. The reason for that is mangrove snapper are very quick biting, and they attack the bait, chomp it up, and come around and snap it up really quickly. They're very, very leader shy, meaning they're not going to come up and bite your leader if you're not doing everything right, you don't have the bait hooked right. So I enjoy mangrove snapper fishing because the guy who consistently catches mangroves and catches a lot of them, he's the advanced angler. It sets yourself apart really quickly. For mangrove snapper, there's a few different techniques that can help you really become a better angler, catch more fish. As far as tackle choices, I like using a lighter rod with a very sensitive tip. That way I can feel the bite very easily. You'll notice the tip to this rod, just a little bit of movement, that tip's moving. Very light rod, this is a jigging rod, it's an offshore angler jigging rod. Ocean Master is the brand form. Light rods help because generally with mangrove snapper fishing, you're casting more and you're going to be fishing longer because typically you're fishing at night. When you get tired, you're fishing all night long, it helps to have a lighter rod too. As far as the reel for mangrove snapper fishing, a high-speed reel is mandatory. The reason for that is the higher the gear ratio, the more speed you have. But on the flip side, if you have a high gear ratio reel, you have lower power. So one of the ways to combat that when you're mangrove snapper fishing is by using a 2-speed reel. A 2-speed reel enables you to have a high-speed gear ratio, but then if you ask, how many of you guys have been fishing for mangrove snapper and you've accidentally caught a yak grouper and it's schooling you to the rocks and breaks you off? That's happened to you? Well, with a 2-speed reel, you have the option to just hit the button on the side of the reel, and now it's like...
Attention Bass Pro Shops customers, our 3 o'clock winner of the Under Armour men's hat, Phil Mickey, and in case I'm butchering your name, Northport, Florida. Phil Mickey from Northport, Florida. You are the winner. Come see me at the aquarium.
No connection.
Yeah. All right, so the high-speed gear ratio, 2-speed reel. So if you get a bigger fish, you just click the button, and it's like you have a totally different reel in your hands. All of a sudden, you went from a 6.1 or 7.1 gear ratio down to a 4.1 or 3.1 gear ratio. That's why I really like these 2-speed reels, because it gives you an option to fish for multiple different fish with the same setup. And if you're fishing for a mangrove snapper, you set the hook and all of a sudden it's a bigger fish, pull and drag, you can just press the button and all of a sudden you're in the lower gear ratio and you have the power to pull that fish up off the bottom so he doesn't break you off. So that's why I enjoy the 2 speeds, but if the 2 speeds on the flip side are a little bit more expensive, a 2-speed reel generally starts $250, $350. A single speed reel, you can get a real nice high-speed gear ratio reel from as low as 140, 150 to as much as 400. This is the Ocean Master jigging reel. It's a size 12, really nice, really light, and very high speed, and it only costs about $199. So it's a pretty good, it's a great value for the quality. I have really thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was so popular it sold out. They'll have some more coming in October, late October, for holiday season, so definitely keep your eye out for that. Also for mangrove snapper, one of the best and most exclusive tips I like giving in my seminars for a mangrove snapper is a double snell rig. Everybody know what that is? You guys know? All right. For those of you who don't know what a double snell rig is, what that means is you're double snelling the hooks, or you're tying 2 hooks to the same line. So let me show you what I mean by that. So to double snell a rig, you simply get 2 of your mangrove snapper hooks. Generally for mangrove snapper, I like using about in nearshore fishing. We're talking out in 20 miles. So for nearshore mangrove snapper fishing, I'll start with about a 4/0 hook with about 30 to 40 pound test. So what you do with this is you just stick the line to the front of the hook, about a 1/2 inch of line, and you just pinch it on the shank of the hook. And then all you do is wrap the line around the shank of the hook and the main line about 6-7 times, and you finish through the back. That's snelling the hook. And then all you do to double snell the hook, you guessed it, is add a second hook. Now when you add the second hook, you have to start through the back and finish through the back. So the first hook you start through the front, finish through the back. The second hook you start through the back and finish through the back. For spacing on these, it depends on the size of bait you're using. But if we're near shore fishing 20 miles from shore, we're fishing for anywhere from a 2 to 3, maybe a 5 pound mangrove at most. So I'm not going to be using a whole thread fin. I might cut them into thirds or even half. So the bait's only going to be about this long. So if my bait's that long, I don't need these hooks very far apart. Generally what I do is about a 1/4 inch from the apex of that hook to the very top of the second hook shank. And then when you've got the spacing right, you just pinch the main line on the back of the hook, wrap it around 7-8 times, and then again finish through the back. So this enables you to create a double snell rig, which is basically 2 hooks on 1 leader. So the double snell rig, then what you do with this bad boy is you put 1 piece of bait on that double snell rig, which allows you to have 2 pieces of bait, or 2 hooks in the piece of bait. You guys know how to bait a double snell rig? You want me to show you? All right, I'll show you. So baiting a double snell rig is another great important thing, because if you do the double snell rig and you've got the rig actually tied correctly, then you need to make sure you're baiting it correctly so you don't create tangles. So again, you take your bait, first step is always cut the tail off. The tail acts as a propeller, makes the bait spin, you'll get tangles under the water. So the first step is getting the tail off the bait. Second step, what I do is I cut the bait into half, so that way you have a smaller piece of bait. Well, that was a pretty small sardine, so we're going to use the whole one. So tail off, I'm just going to tear the head off this one so I have a bigger piece of bait. So when you go to hook your bait with a double snell rig, you got to imagine the bait going to bottom. So if this is my leader, my lead's up here, my lead's going to pull this leader down the bottom like this. So that first hook is the first hook going down. So I want to put that hook towards the more hydrodynamic end of my bait. So my first hook that I drive in is that end hook. I'm going to put it towards the fatter end of the bait, perpendicular to the silver and blue line, which denotes the backbone. So you're going perpendicular to the backbone, up underneath the backbone, out the other side of the bait. Once you've got that hook through the bait, then you want to turn the hook parallel to the silver and blue line, and then put that second hook tip right behind. Again, perpendicular to the silver and blue line, up underneath the backbone, and again, turn it parallel. So now you've got that hook, that bait hooked perfectly straight, and when it starts going down the bottom, that skinny end is going down first, so it's going down hydrodynamically and straight. When it does that, it doesn't create drag, it doesn't stretch, so your lead's going to stay right on your swivel, your bait isn't going to spin around your main line and create a tangle. So this goes down the bottom quickly, and when it hits bottom, it looks natural because there's not going to be any tangles. Then, when you're on the bottom fishing for mangroves, a mangrove snapper, other snapper species, what do? They come up and nibble or snap the bait. So what they do is when they nibble the bait, basically what's happening, I'll try to do this without hooking myself like I did last time. Basically what they're doing is they're breaking up the bait. Now you'll notice with the double snell rig, if you double snell properly, you have 2 pieces of bait, each with the hook in it. If you're using chain hooks, or if you're using 1 hook, they break it up, and then you have a bunch of pieces of bait, and only one of them has your hook in it. So that's why a double snell rig works so much better, and why I recommend it. Because it will literally increase your catch ratio about 50% when you're fishing for mangrove snapper, vermilion snapper, yellowtail snapper, anything that's going to come up and nibble your bait. A double snell rig is a great way to go, especially nearshore or offshore fishing. So we talked about double snell, high gear ratio, sensitive tip. Those are my big tricks to mangrove snapper. Now, you guys fishing smaller boats nearshore on your own vessels, you guys are going out with how many? 4, 5, 6 guys at most, right? 2? All right, so how deep are you fishing generally? Anywhere from 30 to 60 foot? 30? All right, cool. So in that depth of water, for mangrove snapper, a great option for a small boat is chumming. On a large party boat fishing with me out in the middle grounds, we don't necessarily chum because we have 50 anglers or 30 anglers dropping down baits. Someone doesn't hook their bait right, it comes off the hook. Someone catches a fish as you're reeling it up and spitting out all the bait it just ate. So on a party boat, you create your own natural chum line. So chumming isn't important. But on a smaller boat fishing with 2, 3, 4 guys, chumming really helps. Now, you gotta think like a fish. If you're chumming for mangrove snapper on the bottom, hanging a chum bag on the surface behind your boat, what are you doing? It doesn't work in water greater than about 40 foot. If you're fishing 30 foot, there's no tide, you can hang a chum bag off the back of your boat, it'll work fine. But offshore fishing, deeper water, you gotta get the chum down. One of the old school ways to do that was to put a bunch of bait in a brown paper bag, tie a few egg sinkers onto the end of your line, put the bag over the egg sinkers, rubber band it, drop it to the bottom and jig it a few times. That'll break the bag open and it disperses the chum around your fishing spot. It's called a chum bomb. That works great. People got away from that a little bit because put trash in the water, that stuff. Sometimes clients don't like you doing that. So another option that we've used in the recent past is a chum sickle. What you do with the chum sickle is you grab some of that sand chum they have over there, or chum pellets. You mix it with some nasty fish oil, whatever it may be. There's a bunch of different oils out there you can buy, main hidden oil, all that kind of stuff. Mix that all up in a cup, and then before you freeze the cup, tie a larger egg sinker with a little loop of monofilament and drop it in the cup. So now you have a loop of monofilament coming out the top of that cup. You can stick it in your freezer, freeze it up, and then when you go fishing, take that cup out, toss it in your bait well. By the time you get to your fishing spot, you can pull on that string and that chum sickle will come out of the cup because it's thawed out around the edges. You tie it onto your rod, drop the bottom, jig it a few times, and it breaks up right on the bottom. So that's if you're fishing 50, 60, 70, 80 foot of water on a smaller boat. That is a great technique to get those mangroves excited. Once they're excited, mangroves will come up. So if you drop the chum down, you're catching mangroves, bite starts slowing down, you can put a chum bag on the back, and you'll get the mangroves right to the back of your boat. Then you can start free lining. And they're a lot of fun that way. You can fish real light tackle because you don't have to worry about breaking them off. But you got to get them excited first. So dropping chum to the bottom is a great way to do it, but you got to get those mangroves up, off the bottom, get them excited. So I think I covered the mangrove snapper pretty well. What do you guys think? Any questions? All right, cool. Now for gag grouper fishing is a little bit different. Tackle for a gag grouper, you got to be a little bit more picky. A gag grouper is a very smart, very leader-shy, very big fish. So the 4-aught high-speed gear ratio reel won't work. For gag grouper fishing, you want to use a larger 6 or 9-aught reel, and you want to use a lower gear ratio. Typically for gag grouper, I'm using a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 max gear ratio. The lower the gear ratio, the lower the speed of the reel retrieve, but the higher the power. So that's your reel choices. 6, 9-aught, that's the best way to go. If you're fishing deep water for a 40-pound gag, 9-aught's the way to go. 6-aught will catch you about a 20, 30-pound gag. But if you're fishing a big ledge, for big fish, you need a big reel. I always say, if people ask, what do you want? I want to catch a big fish. Well, big tackle, big bait, big patience, a big fish. So that'll help. Also, besides the reel, you have the rod. A rod for gag grouper is just something sturdy. I like the new rods. A lot of these rods still have a pretty sensitive tip. So you still got some play in the rod tip. So that way when you're bottom fishing and you get those little porgies or something coming up and chewing on your sardine, you can still feel them. Some of the guys, especially back in the 80s and 90s, the old broomstick rod, that was the choice. Well, nowadays they make these lighter hollow core blanks, and you can get a heavy backbone rod with a light sensitive tip. So that way you have a fighting chance to feel those little bait stealers coming up and chewing on your sardine. Now for mangroves, I mentioned the sardines. For gag grouper, red grouper, you can change your baits up a little bit. For red grouper, one of my favorite baits is using a long strip of cut squid to mimic an octopus tentacle. In the spring and fall, we have a lot of octopus or a lot of octopi off in our area, and they're one of the red grouper's favorite bait. Gag grouper as well. So if you cut a long strip of squid, about a ½ inch thick and about maybe 10 to 12 inches long, to mimic an octopus tentacle, it is a great red grouper drifting bait. You put 4 or 5 guys on your boat, you drift a large area of hard rock bottom, that red grouper population will come out of the rock bottom and get very excited about those baits. So I love using the long strip of squid. Also, besides that, for gag grouper, a double sardine is a great option. A large live bait really works well, but when you're fishing for gags, you gotta make sure you're hooking your live bait correctly. A lot of guys will hook their live baits in the J-Lo so I can show you a little better. Too many hooks. It's a good problem to have. So when you're fishing, bottom fishing for gag grouper, what I like to do when I'm anchor fishing, straight up and down, what I like to do is tail hook the pinfish. You're hooking the pinfish just above the anal fin and through those fin rays that go into the backbone. When you do this, this weights the back of the pinfish down, so he's struggling to swim up off the bottom, and that struggle will a lot of times excite the gag grouper or the bigger grouper to come up and bite him. Now, this is for anchor fishing straight up and down. And it works, but you have to make sure when you're dropping them down that you're dropping them down slower. You put more pressure on the reel with your thumb. The reason for that is as this fish goes to the bottom, it's going to tend to spin a little bit because it's going down in a funky, awkward way. So in shallower water, 120, 200 foot, this will work, but you need to drop it down a little slower. For deep water, when I'm fishing 400 or 500 foot of water, I hook him up underneath the nose, out the top of the face. That way, when he's going to bottom, he swims down to bottom easily. He doesn't spin. Another reason to hook a bait like this is if you're bridge fishing for big snook and the current's running really heavy, you want to hook him like this. That way, the current's hitting the pinfish in the face and he's not spinning. He looks natural. Another reason you hook him like this is if you're drifting. The boat's drifting, this pinfish is moving. So you want to hook him like this so he looks like he's naturally swimming. But for anchor fishing, straight up and down, boat's not swinging hard, that tail hook is the best way to go. It gets me a little bit more excited and typically makes him try to swim up off the bottom. Also, if you're using a big bait, like a big jolthead porgy or big porgy or a vermilion or something like that, you can hook them right to the top of the crown of the forehead. This is what I like doing for big amberjack. When I'm using a 1, 2, 3 pound bait, if you hook them in the top of the forehead like this, use a long leader, it'll give him a lot of play. He'll swim around real naturally. And typically when that amberjack swallows, that hook will be right in the corner of his mouth when you hook him on the top of the head like that. Oh, don't hook yourself. Any other questions about that? All right, so we talked a little bit about gag grouper, mangroves. Some of the other tackle choices that you want to talk about is flatlining. For flatlining, we're putting a rod out for those kingfish, mackerel, cobia, billfish, you want to use at least something with enough line capacity, so if you hook a big wahoo or something that's moving really fast, you have a fighting chance to pick it up and fight the fish. Generally, what I like using is a larger spinning reel, loaded up with braid, like a 4, 5, 6,000 series spinning reel, loaded up with braid. Also, you can use your snapper fishing rod, just a 4-aught conventional, loaded up with braid backing. That way you have plenty of line in that reel. When you're using a conventional though, you can't cast. So a spinning rod works a little bit better if you have to cast. Now, if you're drift fishing, you don't need to cast because you put your live bait or your dead bait off the side of the boat, and as the boat drifts away, you can just have a grease spool, and that's going to put out your flat line bait. But if you're sitting there at anchor, and there's not much going on, there's not much current, you're going to have to cast that bait away from the boat. So a spinning rod works a little bit better for flat line. Trolling, when you're trolling off, for you guys that have your own boats near shore, you guys should get familiar with trolling because this is the time of year that you can do a lot with trolling. You grab some rods or reels like this, these sea fires, 6 socks, you can load them up with 40, 50, 60 pound test. You can troll the planer and spoon along the beaches 2, 3, 4 miles out. We have crab traps out there right now. Crab traps might as well be chum blocks. The crabbers load them up with a bunch of bait. The crabs swim into them. The bait fish circle around them, and the mackerel and kingfish come in too. Also, every municipality in 9 miles has an artificial wreck or reef. That holds a lot of bait, holds a lot of mackerel and kingfish. You guys can grab 3 or 4 rods, put them out the back of the boat, have your light sunning on the front, and you guys can troll around for some nice fish. 30, 40, 50 pound kingfish are hanging right there. You don't have to burn a lot of fuel, and it's very easy to do. You guys know what I'm talking about, planer and spoon? Everybody know what I'm talking about? All right, cool. Another thing besides the planer and spoon, with the planer and spoon, one of the techniques I use is about 60 pound fluorocarbon or monofilament, about 15 to 18 feet. That's a great amount of spacing behind the planer. Generally ones and twos, and don't forget to stagger them, so that way you can turn and don't get tangled. Now, if you're not doing a planer and spoon, you can always use a hard bait, a crankbait with a larger lip. These crankbaits work very, very well for trolling out there for kingfish. We catch a lot of wahoo, we caught sailfish, we caught a lot of tuna on these things. These Rapala X-Traps, I can't say enough about them. They make a Magnum 30, and they make a Magnum 10 and 20. This is a 20, this is a 30. Literally, it's that easy. 30 goes down 30 feet. The 20 goes down 20 feet. So they make them real simple, and it's great. They troll very well. The only thing about them is once they get hit a few times, they stop trolling well. You got to get a new lure. They have some others out there. Marina, Bass Pro has like 4 different kinds of varieties. That's why I love coming here. I prefer the Rapala. They seem to troll the best at the best speed. We typically on our party boats, we're trolling 7, 8, 9 knots. That's what I recommend for kingfish and mackerel. Anywhere from 5 to about 9 knots. If you're trolling for the big kingfish, you're in a tournament, you'd be slow trolling live bait. Anybody want to know about that? Yeah, I didn't think so. It's hard to troll that slow. You have to either have a trolling valve or you have to have a bunch of outboards and you have the ability to just turn it on. It's pretty difficult to do. That's why I guess it's a tournament thing. Yeah, you can use the sea anchors behind you instead of putting them out to the side. It's another way of doing it. So fishing techniques. We talked a little bit about drifting already, but let's talk about the times that you would use these techniques. For drift fishing, I love to drift spring through fall. Anytime the water's really hot, which is all the time for it, typically summertime, it works very well because in the summer we have flat, calm conditions. The water's not rough, there's not a lot of wind. You go out to a large area of hard rock bottom, and you can drift that area, and you can catch a lot of fish. Drifting works well because I compare it like inshore fishing. If you're fishing a live bait over the flats, you're only fishing that small area where your live bait is. Fish aren't going to travel in to go find your live bait. You're only fishing that local area. Whereas with the lure on the flats, you can use a trolling motor and you can cast that entire flat, right? You can cover a larger area, show your bait to more fish. If you're using your lure right, you typically catch more fish that way. Same thing with drifting. If you're anchor fishing, you're only fishing that small ledge, that specific structure. Drift fishing lets you cover a larger area. If you're an inexperienced captain that you don't have a lot of area, drift fishing works really well because you can watch your bottom machine, find an area of hard rock bottom, drift it, and a lot of times while you're drifting, watching your bottom machine, you'll drift over a big ledge or a crack. And that's a great way to gain your bottom. As an experienced captain, drifting is still a great way to find new bottom, but it also works well in these certain times. Because in the middle of the summer when there's no wind, no current, what happens when you drop your anchor? Your boat sits right on top of it, people hook your anchor line, it doesn't work. So when it's still like that, drifting is the best way to fish. You cover more area, show your baits to more fish. Best drifting speed is anywhere from about 0.3 to about 1.5 knots. Once you're drifting faster than about 1.5 knots, even the best angler is going to have trouble trying to feel the bottom, feel the bite. What you can do if you're drifting too fast, you still want to troll. They sell sea anchors, the same thing we were talking about with trolling. You drop that off the side of your boat, it will help you drift slower. Yeah, bucket on the rope. That'll work, I guess. Yeah, you have to pull back up. Another technique for fishing is anchor fishing. Anchor fishing is the best for gag grouper, mangrove snapper, those fish that live on a rock. Gag grouper, black grouper, these fish will live in a specific hole for 3, 4, 6 weeks. So when you find an area with great gag grouper fishing at big blacks, you want to anchor fish that area because those groupers aren't going to move very far from their hole. That's their home. That's where they make a bed. Gag grouper, typically about 3 weeks is how long they'll stay in an area. Black grouper will stay in an area up to 2 months. So they make a local ledge their home and they're the top dog. So when I'm gag grouper fishing or fishing for those bigger species, you have to find that ledge or rock they're hiding under. And you have to fish right on top of it, drop that bait right in front of that hole, and you gotta hold on. And use that big tackle because again, they're not going far from their hole. So if you get a big fish to bite your bait right in front of his hole, what is he going to do? He's going to try to break you off. So the big tackle becomes important. Also, anchor fishing, a lot of guys will put their boat on the spot. You got to put your bait on the spot. So what I mean by that, guys, is if the wind's coming out of the north, your current's coming out of the east, and you want to get to a spot over here, you don't put your boat on that spot, you want to put your baits on it. So you would anchor up, put your anchor up to the north, drift south, you get your boat just over that area, but your current's going to push your baits this way. So you would actually want to anchor, if your spot's here, you would want to anchor up here in front of the spot. So that way your current's going to push your bait to the spot. It would work a little bit better if I had an easel to draw it. It's a little harder doing it in person like that, but I can talk to you more about it after the seminar if you have questions. But you got to think about where your baits are going, not where your boat's going. There's not too many secrets left anymore. It's real easy with GPS and all these new fancy radars. You can see a boat fishing and cursor over to it and find the spot you're fishing. So there's not too many secrets left. You can do what you can to protect your fishing spot, but someone's going to be able to find it themselves or steal it from you using this new technology that's out there. The only secret that's left is being able to put your bait on the spot. And that's really what separates an inexperienced or amateur captain from an experienced captain. Being able to put your bait in front of that grouper's mouth, right in the bottom or top of that ledge.
Use your anchor line, tie off on your back plates to swing your boat.
Yes.
Or you don't have to pull that anchor all the time.
Yes.
Around. You know,
Yeah.
that gives you a little,
Yep.
little
bridling the anchor is what he's talking about. I don't ever use my back cleats just because when you put it on the back cleat, yeah, well, you have a big boat. But even on a small boat, if you anchor to the back of the boat, yeah, but even on a smaller boat, if you anchor to the back of your vessel, you open yourself up because if you get a big wave, it can swamp the back of your boat. That's how those NFL players passed away. I never recommend going to the back of your boat. What I recommend is mounting cleats on the sides of the vessel. So that way your side is to the waves. So that way you have less of a chance of swamping the boat less quickly. It can still happen whenever you're sideways to a sea, but typically those, we have bridle cleats, and typically they're just forward and midships on either side of the boat. So if your spot, if you missed it by a few degrees and that spot's over there, you bridle the boat to the left side and you're going to swing over there. You bridle to the opposite side you want to swing. And that's a great opportunity, that's a great thing to use when you do miss a spot. And even as an experienced captain, you might hit the spot, but something's changed. Say your anchor heading was 170, you move a few miles, a little squall line came by, now your anchor heading is 190, well, you just missed that spot. Instead of stopping what you're doing and pulling the anchor again, bridling is a great way to swing or sail yourself over. That brings me to another thing during rough weather. When the wind's hauling, when you're in a rough sea, another option to do is called anchor drifting, is what I call it. When you're fishing a large area of hard rock bottom, you can't drift because the wind's hauling, but you got heavy seas, it's just not safe to drift. You can let out your anchor, set up on an area on that rock bottom, fish a little bit, and then as the bite starts slowing down, instead of pulling the anchor and moving, just drop out 20, 30 yards of scope, and that boat will fly back on that anchor. And now you're fishing that chum line that when you're losing fish, when they're regurgitating, all that chum's falling behind the boat. So, you can just let out a little bit of scope and scoot back onto that area, and it's a way to drift when you can't drift.
I got it too. So I'm from up north, and we use a lot of position control quarters. You guys do that down there at all?
On smaller boats, I've seen guys do it offshore. Our fishing boats are 40, 50 foot or larger, so no, we don't do it.
I mean, like a 21.
Yeah, people do it all the time. Those GPS positioning trolling motors are awesome. I don't know a lot about them personally because, again, with larger boats for the most part, but from what I know about them, they work very well, obviously.
Do you worry about the fish that trolling motor running? Do you find that at all?
Well, we're fishing deeper water, so it wouldn't spook them that much. On our party boats, we have generators running at all times. So a little trolling motor compared to a big generator, it wouldn't make much difference. When you're fishing deeper than about 30, 40 foot, that sound is less of a worry. As far as a trolling motor, it's a real low hum. It wouldn't be much of a worry out past 30 foot. But trolling motor in 10 foot of water, that might make a little bit of a difference. I would rather set an anchor, and that way I'm quiet, more stealthy. But what I do when I'm fishing the flats with my trolling motor is you want to try to gauge the wind. So you troll the motor up to your spot, you drift over it, and then you use that trolling motor to just readjust your drift. You really don't want to be trolling motoring the whole time because, again, you're spooking the fish. But in the deeper water, you can let it run because it's not as much of a worry. So to answer your question, it matters how deep you're fishing. Any other questions? All right. So we talked about anchor fishing, we talked about drifting, trolling. A great time of year to troll is now. Besides the kingfish and mackerel, you can troll grouper. Gag grouper, any month that ends in ER is best for gag grouper. As it gets colder, those gag grouper come inshore. So a great time to troll the channel of Tampa Bay is come November, December, when water gets cold. Those grouper will come inside these bridges, and you control the edge of the shipping channel or any of those mitigation sites. Again, with one of these Rapala lures, I've seen guys troll big bucktails. You can troll them behind a planer to get that hook down a little deeper, or you can just use a big lift jig like I'm showing you here, and that'll bring that bait down low enough to where those gag grouper will come up and swallow it. But you got to get it low enough so that lure is just cruising over the bottom or hit bottom. With these guys, I like to put them far enough back so that way they're so deep, they're literally bouncing off the bottom. And that noise will come out, will incite those grouper to come out and feed. So that's how I troll inside Tampa Bay along that shipping channel or outside Tampa Bay along the shipping channel. Great time of year to do it when it gets cold. Until it gets cold, you'd be trolling for those kingfish and mackerel. And like I said before, the billfish are in this area. We're catching a lot of sailfish right now. Flat lines, we kind of beat that one up already. Any questions on that? Cool. Tools you need. One of the biggest things that I promote at all my seminars are these hookouts. These hookouts are really cool. Let me show you how they work here. When you're mangrove snapper fishing, especially like on our 39-hour, you got 20 hours of fishing time and a 2-day bag limit. So you're trying to catch a lot of snapper really quickly. I'm going to try to use my bait fish to show you this, but I got to hook them like I would eat. Yeah, there we go. So you reel up that mangrove snapper and you're trying to get them off your hook quickly because you want to get down there and catch more. That bites, they're filming. You got to get down there quickly and get more. So what I like to do is use this de-hooker, and I use a little pouch so it's right at my head. So when I catch that fish, I set my rod down against the rail, I grab the leader line without even touching the fish, just grab the hook, turn that handle upside down, give it a shake, and that fish will fall right in my cooler bucket, or if he's not a keeper, shake him off over the side of the boat, and he'll fall right off the hook very quickly. That way you can get back down and start fishing quickly. Also, since you didn't touch the fish, you don't have to clean your hands off before you grab your rod. So not only did you not touch the fish, so if he was a keeper, you don't have to touch him, again, helping the species. But if he is a keeper, you don't have to get your hands dirty. And if you're using the pouch, you don't have to look for your de-hooker. That saves you a lot of fishing time. It might only save you 30, 40 seconds of fish, but if you're catching 50, 60, 100 fish on a 39-hour trip, you might have saved yourself 20 minutes of fishing time. Cannot recommend these things enough. If you come up and look at my tackle box after I'm done talking, I don't have any needle nose pliers. And the reason for that is these guys. You don't need needle nose pliers anymore. That's the way of the past. These de-hookers, they have them right over here. I'll show you where they're at. Definitely recommend them. Besides the de-hookers, cutting pliers. I like using dites or the cutting pliers because, again, needle nose pliers, they only have a very small cutting surface. Cutting pliers or dites, they have a larger cutting surface, and typically that's what they're made to do is cut things so they last a little bit longer and they cut a little bit better. So I just carry a pair of cutting pliers on my de-hookers. That way I can quickly rig or quickly unhook fish, and they're really helpful tools. Another helpful tool that you need to have out there is your venting tool. If you're fishing deeper than about 90 foot of water, you need to have a venting tool. How many of you fish past 90 foot of water and don't know what I mean? Howard, you know what I mean? Alright, so we won't cover venting tools then. Another thing is a bait knife. Always carry a bait knife, and in my experience, I always carry extras too. Bait knives are a good thing. When you're offshore fishing, I always carry another bait knife on my person, whether it's my pocket knife or a smaller bait knife. The reason for that is anchor lines. You can sometimes get anchor lines caught in your prop. In the worst case scenario, I've seen people get dragged over the boat, catching big fish, and you get a hook in you, and all of a sudden you're dragged off the boat. Very important to have a safety knife, if you will, with you for that type of situation as well. Rags, a fishing rag, that goes without saying. I always have a rag in my pocket, and then I have a bucket of water next to me. Because when I'm fishing, again, we're fishing longer trips, long range trips in deep water, and hopefully we're catching a lot of fish. So if you're catching a lot of fish and your hands start getting slimy, there's nothing worse than grabbing your rod, feeling that bait bite, and you go to reel, and when you start reeling, your hand slips. I missed fish that way. That's why I'm really almost OCD about making sure my hands are clean before I grab my rod. That way, when I feel the bite and start reeling, nothing's going to slip. Gives me less excuses. Lose a pole. Yeah, we'll lose a pole. One thing, you guys said you have a lot of your own boats, so one thing I want to cover, make sure to cover is safety on the water. One of the most important things to do is file a float plan, whether it's with your wife or a friend or a buddy or even the Coast Guard. You want to file a float plan, make sure they know when you're leaving, when you're coming back, your approximate heading or course, and when you're coming back, and then a lot of times I'll give them a drop dead time. That way, if you don't come back at your time, and they wait an hour or so and you're still not back, they have an idea of where to send help. All right, that's very important. In our case, we're fishing 110, 120, 140 miles from shore on a boat that goes 40, 50 miles an hour. It's very important to make sure that we know when they're leaving, when they're coming back, and where they're going. So that way, if anything was to happen, we know where to send help. Also, besides filing a float plan, another important thing is an E-perb. E-perbs are very expensive. I understand it's a big expense. Generally, anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000. ACR has a product over in the electronics department. They have a personal E-perb for about $600. Really recommend getting one of those for your small boats if you're fishing beyond about 15 miles, because your VHF radio does not work more than about 14, 15, 16 miles from shore. It's a line of sight radio. So if you don't have a boat around you and you have a problem 20 miles from shore, your cell phone doesn't work, your VHF doesn't work, what are you going to do? If your boat sinks, you're going to be in a tough spot. So an E-perb is priceless. It touches the water, it sends your signal to the Coast Guard, and they're there within 15 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They're on top of you helping you. Another important thing is a sat phone. I have some information up here on sat phone 911. Sat phones are really cool. When we're fishing 100 miles from shore, it's nice to be able to call the Marina and say, hey, we're going to be 30, 40 minutes late. We caught a big fish. We're running late, so don't send the Coast Guard after us. We're going to be late. We're going to be back at this time with this heading. So it's nice to be able to call shore when you're out that far. So a sat phone is another great option if you're out there fishing. One of the most important things, never leave home without, is a ditch bag. How many of you guys have a boat that travels more than 30, 40 miles an hour? You guys? So if you have a fast boat, things can happen quickly. If you hit something, that boat starts to sink, if you crack your hull, whatever might happen, it becomes a very dangerous situation. So it's nice to have a ditch bag because you have your first aid kit, you have your flares, you have your E-perb, you have everything in this bag right underneath your helm. So if anything does happen and a bad situation's going down, all you have to do is reach down and grab the bag and you're off. It's very nice to have that option. On our faster vessels, we always have a ditch bag loaded with an E-perb, sat phone, flares, first aid kit, and multiple other items. So that way, if the worst case scenario happens, you grab the bag and you're off. So a ditch bag is very important to have, especially if you're fishing offshore beyond radio range. So party boat fishing versus small boat fishing, we covered that a lot already. One of the things I can emphasize is party boat fishing, since a lot of you guys already have smaller boats, you know about small boat fishing. I don't need to talk about the benefits of that. The benefits of party boat fishing, one of the biggest things I like is the camaraderie. You go out on a party boat, instead of you're putting in your smaller boat, you gotta go fuel it up, you gotta trailer it to the boat ramp, you gotta clean it when it's done. You're really responsible for a lot of things. On a party boat, you show up, you pay your money, get back, kick up your feet, relax, have a beer or two, and you get to talk to the people around you. I'm 25 years old. I grew up, I'm fourth generation Floridian, fourth generation owner of our company, but fifth generation fisherman. So I know a lot from my family, but some of the most important lessons and some of the coolest things I learned about fishing, I learned on the back deck of our party boat during fishing trips. What I like doing is I pick the saltiest, crustiest looking angler out, and I'll sit down next to him and try to pick his brain. And a lot of these guys are old salts, they love to talk. You just gotta get them talking. Buying them a beer generally works well. You get them talking. We have one guy that fishes with us, his name's Jighead Ed. If you follow us on Facebook, you've seen his picture 1,000 times. He catches some of the most quality fish nearly every trip. And you get him talking, he'll talk for 3 hours. And he'll tell you his most secretive tips and tricks. And it's really cool to be able to listen to a guy like that while you're out fishing. The way out, the way back, you have nothing better to do. So it's a great opportunity to talk to fellow anglers. Also, besides that, you can learn from fellow anglers like I talked about. You can meet other fishing friends, a lot of like-minded people. I can't tell you how many times loading our party boats, offloading our party boats every day, do I see people meet a fishing friend and become fellow anglers. We have one group of retired gentlemen, ages like 50 to 70. They met on the boat, and now they go fishing together all the time on our boats. And there's like 10 to 12 of them. They used to do the party boats, but because they met so many fishing friends, now what they do is they go out and charter our boats. So they take a private charter on a smaller boat, and they get a much higher quality trip, but because they have so many friends, they're able to split that cost. It's not that much more money. So party boat fishing is a really cool way because you get to meet more people, learn more about fishing, and what do you want to add?
You get them clean, and you can get them cooked.
Yeah.
Cook the fillets, clean those fish. 100 feet from the dock is a restaurant. Go in there with a bag full of fillets and fry them. How you want them? You want them fried, Asian fried, Viking, hush puppies.
Howard has been fishing with us for a very, very long time, and his favorite part about it is when we come in, the restaurant right next door offers to cook your catch. So the mate's filleted up, or you fillet up for yourself, you walk right next door and have your fresh catch cooked. It's really, really good and a great way to end the day. I love taking someone out fishing. Oh, I don't like fish. Oh, don't worry about it, more for me. I cook it up for them in the restaurant, and it changes their mind because you've never had fresher fish. And it's really cool, especially for kids. Take a kid out fishing, show them how to fish, get them the fish, and then take them in, clean the fish, and have them cook it. It's a really cool way to show the kids how it comes to be, because so often they just go to the grocery store and they don't really realize the full process. So it's a cool benefit to fishing. Do you guys have any other questions? Anything else I didn't go over that you want to learn? I'm going to wrap this thing up, so I just want to make sure I covered everything. Any other questions? Howard?
I've also seen some kids, there's about 10 or 12 kids together in a group on a half-day film. My gosh, it's just every kid, it's birthday party for my son, and he wants to take his friends, daddy to go fishing, mama's taking.
Yeah.
So they call the fish, cook them, bait them, it makes a great day. Man.
We also offer a birthday special, so you get to go fishing on your birthday for free. You go to hubbardsmarina.com and click info. There's a birthday trip offer, so you can learn more about that. Definitely recommend you guys checking us out on Facebook. I run our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube pages, so you can check out what we have there. If you have any questions, you can message me through there. You can come up and grab my business card. We can email, whatever you guys want. Our website's on the brochures. Again, we do anything from 2 inches of water out past 1,000 foot, 5, 10, 12, 39, 44, 63-hour trips, plus a ton of private charters. We have a 60-foot Hatteras yacht-style vessel, or go-fast boats.
One question from the from our internet fans. Ask about fishing tides. Any preference on tides?
Well, offshore fishing, the tides don't matter as much as it does the salooner periods. When you're offshore fishing, salooner majors and minors, those are a great time to go fishing. And what I mean by that is when you look at the peak or the tide graph, the peak times are the salooners. You can also get a newspaper and it'll list the salooner times for the day. A great way that I like doing it is just timeanddate.com. It'll tell you when the sun rises, when the moon sets, what moon phase it is, and it'll give you this moon set and salooner times. So timeanddate.com is what I use. Inshore fishing though, tides matter. Anything from about 5 miles offshore till the back bays or inshore bayous, tides really matter. I like when water's moving. So incoming, outgoing, it doesn't matter. It matters the area you're fishing. because some spots, the outgoing tide is best inshore. Some spots, the incoming tide is best inshore. The reason for that is the topography. Game fish, your snook, redfish, trout, they feed as ambush opportunity predators. So points, pockets, and passes are where they're hanging out, the 3 P's of fishing. So if that snook is hanging out in a pocket off a point, or he's in a pass hanging behind a tidal pole, he's waiting for a bait to swim by him so he can come out and ambush it. So if you're fishing, say, John's Pass, for example, the tide's incoming. So that means the tide's coming in through the bridge. You wouldn't fish the down tide side or inside John's Pass because your baits would be getting pushed out away from the bridge. You would fish the up tide side of the bridge, so that way your bait's going right into the bridge and right past those pilings where those snook are ready to ambush. So as far as what tide, it matters what spot you're fishing and whether you're fishing offshore or inshore, but it really matters your area. So I would say think like a fish. So if you're fishing an incoming tide and your grass flat's laid out here and there's a nice trough here, that incoming tide's going across that flat, that means incoming tide's the time to fish there. Because as the bait comes off the flat, the snook and redfish are waiting to ambush it. But if it's an outgoing tide and it's all oyster bars on this side, you won't want to fish that flat at outgoing tide because the bait's not being flushed to the predators in the right way. So again, just think like a fish, try to know the area's topography, and that'll help you pick the best tide. Any other questions? My seminar must be really good.
Yeah.
Our half-day trip is daily at 8 a.m. We do a 10-hour all-day Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday at 7 a.m. And then as far as our long-range specialty trips, just go to hubbardsmarina.com, click fishing trips, and there's a specialty trip schedule. That will list all the times and dates and all that kind of stuff.
What do you do in fairness for people to fight for pay in advance and want that transducer spot? For people that can't get to that area, do you swing it where they?
What we do, that brings up a great point. The transducer spot. A lot of people think the back of the boat's the best place to fish. On a small boat, the transducer's in the stern. On any charter boat where the captain's worth his salt, the transducer won't be in the back. It's in the middle of the vessel. So on all of our boats, the transducer is in the middle of the vessel. So if you want to be fishing the transducer, you need to be up on the sides of the boat. And as far as the stern being the best place, the only time the stern is the best place to fish is if you're anchor fishing and the current and tide, or the wind and current are going in the same direction. Because, for example, if the wind's out of the north and the current's out of the east, and you're fishing that stern corner, your bait's getting swept along the side of the boat. You're going to get tangled with everybody on the back, and it's going to be a pain in your butt. But if you're fishing where the wind and current are going the same direction, that means both are coming out of the north. Then if you're fishing on the stern, your baits are going right off the back of the boat, and everybody else's chum is going right off the back of the boat. So that would be a situation in which the stern is the best place to fish. But it almost hardly never works out that way. Either the currents go one way or the other. Me personally, the best place to fish is as long as I got water under my feet. And what I do is I try to find an area where people aren't. So generally, I'm fishing either up on the bow, or I'm fishing midships, just forward of midships on our boats where the guest spots are. And a trick is casting out. Because if you're fishing a party boat, there's 20, 30 leads going down in a small area, the fish kind of get weary because there's a lot of lines. If someone doesn't know what they're doing, the lead's bouncing up and down. So if you cast out, you're outside of that ring of fire. And generally that more aggressive, larger quality fish is going to be hanging outside of that. So casting out enables you to reach those more quality, less aggressive fish that are hanging out there. So to answer your question, on our longer trips 10 hours or longer, when you book your spot, when you book your trip, you pick your spot. So that's how we handle fairness. If you want the stern, you've got to book early. And our half-day trip, when you arrive, you have an opportunity to stand in line. So if you arrive at 6 a.m., you want to stand in line all the time, you can get the stern. But if you show up at 8 o'clock, most likely there's someone who's been waiting longer and you're not going to get the stern. Any other questions?
Where would you say the best place to fish if the saltwater meets the freshwater? Like kind of like an estuary, where tarpon can go in there, snook can go in there, redfish can go in there. Where would be the best place?
Any time that water is meeting, whether it be at a pass where you have a strong outgoing tide pushing dirty water into the clean Gulf, if you're fishing a bayou where fresh water is meeting salt water, generally the best area to fish is that line. So for example, if you see that mud line, a lot of times those predators are hanging right in that mud line, waiting for their ambush fish. But as far as inshore, I would fish the points, pockets, or passes. So in that situation, at the mouth of an estuary, that's a pass. So you have a good spot there. But most likely, are you fishing a boat or are you shore fishing?
Fishing from a boat.
Fishing from a boat. So if you're fishing from a boat, I would do circles in there. Is it shallow water or deeper water?
I mean, it's about 50 foot deep.
Yeah, so look for that hole. Because you're going to have a 10, 12-foot hole, and then it's going to come up to 6 foot the rest of the area. The reason for that is at these passes, water creates a tidal pool or a tidal rip, and that'll dig out the sand. So that little hole where the tide's spinning is where the predators are going to be waiting. Because as the bait comes out, they get stuck in that whirlpool, and it's real easy for a predator to come out and ambush them. So to answer your question is, I fish the tidal rip right where that hole is. Any other questions? All right, guys, we're going to do the drawing real quick. If you guys were here through the seminar, you got a ticket at the beginning, and you have a chance to win a free 10-hour all day. So pull out your tickets. A beautiful assistant. Right there? No. All right. Winning ticket number 5636. Anybody? 5636.